Have you ever been lying in bed at night, exhausted but unable to sleep, feeling your heart race for no clear reason? Your body heavy yet wired, and thinking, something is happening to me, and I don't have words for it. If that question hit too close to home, take a breath, because you're not losing your mind and you're not dying. What you're experiencing has been reported by millions of people quietly, often in isolation, afraid to talk about it because it sounds too strange, too spiritual, or too personal to explain without being dismissed. Sudden waves of fatigue, pressure in the chest, heightened emotions, vivid dreams, moments of clarity followed by confusion, a sense that the world feels both familiar and foreign at the same time. This isn't weakness, and it isn't random. There is a reason this shows up during periods of spiritual awakening, and there is also a reason science is only now starting to take these experiences seriously. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why these physical symptoms appear during what many traditions call the dark night of the soul, and why they're not signs of breakdown, but signals of transition. And once you see the connection between quantum consciousness, the observer effect, and how the nervous system responds to meaning, you won't be able to interpret your own experience the same way again. This changes how you see fear, how you see suffering, and how you see yourself in the middle of it. But before we can talk about transformation, there's something you need to know, something scientists uncovered nearly a century ago that quietly dismantled the idea of a passive universe. Because if what they discovered is accurate, then consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it participates in it. And that raises a question so unsettling most people avoid it entirely. And that's exactly why so many people are becoming aware of this right now, often without anyone explaining it to them. As you're listening, notice what's happening internally, not intellectually, but physically or emotionally. Some of you might feel a tightness release, others a subtle chill, others a strange sense of recognition. If that's happening, capture it in a single word and place it below, just one word that describes what you're feeling in this moment. I pay attention to those patterns, and if something here landed differently, if a connection quietly clicked into place, let me know in whatever way feels natural to you, because that feedback tells me which questions actually matter. There's also a small group of people who feel drawn to examining reality with honesty instead of comfort, who aren't here for noise, but for clarity. If you're one of them, you already understand what to do. No pressure, no announcement, just awareness. All right, let's go back to 1927. In 1927, at the Solvay conference in Brussels, something happened that quietly dismantled the idea of a predictable universe. Werner Heisenberg, working alongside physicists like Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein, presented what became known as the uncertainty principle, while experiments like the double-slit experiment were being intensely debated. In its simplest form, researchers fired a single electron through two narrow slits toward a screen, expecting it to behave like a tiny particle. What happened next broke the rules of physics. The electron didn't act like a particle at all. It behaved like a wave, spreading out and creating an interference pattern, as if it passed through both slits at the same time. But the moment scientists tried to observe which slit it went through, the wave collapsed. The electron snapped into a single defined position, like it suddenly decided what it was, only after being watched. Wait, read that again. The behavior of matter changed depending on whether it was being observed. This wasn't philosophy or metaphor. It was repeatable, measurable quantum mechanics. The observer effect revealed that observation itself alters the outcome, that the quantum field doesn't settle into reality until interaction occurs. Reality, at its most fundamental level, exists as probabilities until consciousness enters the equation, and this is exactly why certain moments in your life feel charged when you're paying attention, why you sometimes feel watched even when no one is there, why coincidences stack up right after you think of someone you haven't spoken to in years. Why reality feels strangely fluid when your awareness sharpens. You're not imagining it. When you're conscious, present and attentive, you are literally collapsing possibilities into lived experience. That heightened sensitivity, the feeling that things line up differently when you're alert, isn't superstition. It's what consciousness expansion feels like inside a participatory universe. But here's the disturbing part they rarely talk about. If observation helps create reality, then what happens when you're not observing at all, when you're distracted, on autopilot, half asleep inside your own life? That autopilot question, there's an answer, and it's more unsettling than most people expect. In the early 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet at the University of California, San Francisco, ran a series of experiments that shook assumptions about free will. Participants were asked to make a simple voluntary movement while their brain activity was measured. What Libet discovered was that the brain initiated the action several hundred milliseconds before the person became consciously aware of deciding. In parallel, modern neuroscience identified something called the default mode network, a system of brain regions that stays active when you're not focused on the present moment. Together, these findings point to a reality most people never confront. Basically, your brain runs on autopilot the majority of the day. You felt it before. You drive home and barely remember the drive. You shower and lose 10 minutes. You scroll, eat, react, answer, all without fully being there. And the disturbing implication is this: if consciousness influences reality, then most of what you experience is being shaped while you're not fully conscious at all. Which means a large portion of your lived reality is being created from habits, memories, and emotional patterns you didn't actively choose in the moment. And this explains why certain sensations show up without warning. That heaviness in your chest when nothing is technically wrong. That sudden exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. That pressure in your head or tightness in your stomach that appears when you slow down for half a second. That's your subconscious mind, replaying old frequencies, old perceptions, old interpretations of the world. If you felt a chill just now, or a subtle drop in your chest, that's recognition, not fear. Your body already understands what your mind is catching up to. This is why you're here. You sensed that something was off long before you had language for it, and you were right. But here's the question that most people never stop to ask, and once you hear it, it doesn't let go. If so much of your reality is being generated unconsciously, whose patterns are you actually living by? Because here's what nobody talks about. Look, I need to be real with you for a second. There was a long stretch of my life where I honestly thought something was wrong with me. Not in a dramatic way, just this constant, quiet sense of being off. For almost 3 years, I walked around feeling disconnected, anxious for no obvious reason, exhausted even on good days. I wasn't some enlightened person having mystical experiences. I was confused. I was overwhelmed. I was a mess trying to function in a world that suddenly felt too loud, too shallow, too fast. And the hardest part was that I couldn't explain it to anyone without sounding unstable. That confusion had a cost. I lost friendships because I couldn't relate anymore. Small talk felt unbearable. Conversations about things that used to matter felt empty, like I was acting in a play I no longer believed in. I'd sit alone by choice and then hate myself for it. I remember lying awake at night wondering if I was just depressed, if maybe I needed medication, if I had overthought myself into a problem that didn't exist. I genuinely believed I might be broken. That fear was isolating in a way I don't think people talk about enough. Then I came across this research. Not a quote, not a motivational post, actual studies. And something finally clicked. The science didn't excuse the pain, but it explained it. I wasn't malfunctioning. I was becoming aware. And awareness isn't comfortable at first. If you've ever felt like you don't belong here, like you notice patterns others miss, like simply existing feels draining for reasons you can't name, I need you to hear this clearly. You're not alone. You're not defective. You're awake. And waking up is one of the most difficult states a human being can go through. The comments on these videos show it every time. Thousands of people saying the same thing in different words. I thought it was just me. It's not. You're not crazy. You're connected to something real. And if hearing this helps, if it brings even a small sense of relief, knowing you're not isolated in it, there's a space forming here for people who are done pretending. No pressure. But if you're tired of carrying this quietly, this might be where you belong. And if this hits you deeply, drop a 111 below, just so you can see how many others felt it too. All right, now that we got that out, let's talk about what you can actually do with this. Here's what changes everything, and it's the part most people never hear explained clearly. You've been treating your sensitivity like a weakness, like something that makes life harder than it should be. But it's the opposite. You're not broken. You're operating at a different frequency, one that picks up information most people tune out. That gut feeling you keep second-guessing isn't random. That quiet knowing you talk yourself out of isn't imagination. Those moments you brushed off as coincidence weren't accidents. They were your consciousness interacting with the field of reality itself, responding to patterns before your rational mind caught up. Remember what we walked through. The double-slit experiment showed that observation changes outcomes. The observer effect revealed that reality doesn't fully settle until it's engaged. Neuroscience showed that unconscious patterns shape most of what we experience. None of those discoveries stand alone. Together, they point to one unavoidable insight. Consciousness isn't just something inside you. It's part of what reality is made of, which means you're not simply moving through a fixed world, reacting to whatever happens. You're participating in its formation moment by moment, whether you realize it or not. Right now, as you're watching this, that process is happening. Your attention is collapsing possibilities into experience. The fact that this video appeared in your feed at this exact point in your life isn't meaningless. You didn't stumble onto it. You were already asking the question, even if you didn't have words for it yet. Every time you felt different growing up, every time you sensed there was more happening beneath the surface, every time you trusted your intuition and then talked yourself out of it, you were right. All of it. You carry a level of perception most people never develop, not because they can't, but because they choose comfort over awareness. So the loneliness you felt, the sense of disconnection, that isn't a flaw in your design. It's a side effect of seeing beyond the surface. It's what happens when you stop fully buying into the simulation everyone else is busy maintaining. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed, and it's where things become truly unsettling. If consciousness really does create reality, then what happens when your expanded awareness collides with someone else's unconscious patterns? What happens when two completely different realities try to occupy the same space? That question changes how you understand relationships, conflict, and influence. And that's exactly what the next video is about. But before that, there's one more layer to this that most people aren't ready to face. Before you go, try this with me. Close your eyes for 3 seconds and notice what's happening inside you. Not the thoughts, but the feeling underneath them. Open your eyes and hold on to one single word that describes that state. Don't analyze it, just let it surface. Place that word below, without explanation. Think of it as a shared experiment, a snapshot of where collective awareness is landing right now. When you look back later and see the pattern that forms, it will say more than any comment ever could. This space isn't designed for everyone, and it was never meant to be. It's for people who feel too much, notice too much, and can't pretend not to see what they see. If that describes you, you already understand what this is. There's no pressure here, no performance, no convincing, just an open door into conversations that value truth over comfort. Step through it or don't. Either choice is respected. The next video goes deeper into what happens when conscious observers generate conflicting realities in the same space. Why certain people drain you while others energize you. Why presence can be felt before words are spoken. Why relationships shift the moment awareness changes. It reframes how you see every interaction you have. Your consciousness brought you here. What happens now is your choice.